welcome to Conversation with a Chef. I'm Jo Ritty and I love sharing with you the conversations I get to have with talented and passionate chefs. It's the backstory, if you will, to the food they're putting up. I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the lands and airwaves of Naarm, where this conversation takes place. Land which was never ceded. Land where communities came together to eat seasonally, locally, and without exhausting resources. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and rising. Today, I'm talking to Claudio Casoni at Officina Gastronomica Italiana in Peran. I had dinner at OGI a couple of weeks ago, and I loved everything about it. From the exposed brick walls to the Art Deco lighting to the wall of wine. The food and wine were delicious, but the thing I loved most about OGI was owner Claudio and the obvious love he has for hospitality and sharing the food and wine of his region, Emilia-Romagna. He told us some glorious stories on the night, so I knew that getting to sit down with him for a one-on-one chat would be a good time, and I was not wrong. Claudio and I talked for an hour and explored all kinds of things about what brought him to Melbourne, his memories of making pasta with his nonna. There was a deep dive into natural wines and coffee, and we also talked about the menu at OGI. I drank a velvety, chocolatey espresso, and I'm not sure I can ever drink coffee elsewhere now. Claudio imports the beans from his friend Manuel Terzi in Bologna. I actually don't think you've tasted Italian coffee until you drink this coffee. Extraordinary. I was hanging off Claudio's every word. It was such a treat to hear his story, and I am delighted to be able to share it with you.
Have you had a coffee?
I did have a coffee. I had an espresso. It was delicious.
It's I've been importing the coffee since the very beginning. It's a friend of mine, Bologna.
Yeah. So maybe who was telling me the story? Vanessa was saying that when you were a student over there, you would cross the town and pay €3 rather than the €1 that all the other students.
I was fascinated by, today if you talk about specialty coffee, it's something that everybody is familiar with, what it means, and especially in Melbourne. At the time, we were talking about, what year was that? 2003. So we're talking about 20 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
20 years ago, it was already pioneering in Bologna. Have you ever been to Bologna?
I haven't, no.
So Bologna is renowned, like one of the major attractions is Bologna is full of towers, but in the city, there are these two leaning towers, and there's a classic like piazza, like a square there. And there's a small alleyway that leads to his first espresso bar, which is a very classic, charm Italian espresso bar. And my friend Manuel, today is renowned, is considered one of the best artisan Italian roasters. And he comes from a family of hospitality entrepreneurs. So he opened his espresso bar in the late 90s, then he wasn't happy with the quality of coffee that was around, and decided to start sourcing the green coffee from Central and South America and roast it on his own. Then he developed he's got an incredible expertise. And he does a product that when you taste it, I fell in love with it. Then I didn't know that years later I was finding myself in Melbourne, opening an espresso bar, and because since the very beginning, our point of difference wanted to be like, I want to do an espresso bar that reminds of the espresso bars in Italy. Since I'm Italian myself, Armando, Davide, so we wanted to have that authentic Italian charm. So I also thought, I need an espresso that is a true representation of the Italian espresso.
It's quite chocolatey and like so smooth, and often I feel like I've had quite bitter Italian coffee before, but that's not bitter at all.
Look, Italian, when we talk about Italian coffees, like when you talk with pizza and other stuff, you get a lot of Italians get triggered. The truth is that Melbournians, especially in the last 20 years, they've done an outstanding job with coffee roasting. They did that, and that's another thing why I look up on them. They did that, with their own philosophy, which is very different from the Italian one. The problem about the Italian coffee market is that it's been stuck for decades, and most roasters, they still do the same product they used to do 50 years ago, without taking account the evolutions in the sector. So you have to know where to get your coffee today in Italy, because sometimes you still find those very bitter classic Italian espresso, which is not very nice. But at the same time, there's been some pioneers. Oh, this is Davide.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Good.
There's been some pioneers like Manuel Terzi. He got interviewed by the CNN.
Cheers.
There's an international espresso bar guide it's curated by 5-6 journalists from New York. And he ended up with 2 of his espresso bars in the best espresso bars in the world.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but he's extremely passionate and competent about what he does.
And you knew back then. You had your...
Yeah, because I was charmed. The truth is, I was charmed by what he was doing, because he was going completely. 20 years ago, he was completely going against the trend. Italians wanted to pay, and this is one of the problems in Italy. Italians wanted to pay €1 for the espresso. It's always been like that.
Yeah.
So it's hard with the rising cost of labor, ingredients, coffee, and all of that to keep the price of a cup below €1. If you really want to serve a quality coffee today in Europe, it must be no less than €1.40. So he was doing €2 20 years ago, €1.80, €2, but he was really serving the excellence in coffee.
Yeah.
So that triggered a lot of Italians, because they thought like, oh no, this is not possible. It's it's ripping people off. He went through the first few years. He went through a lot of criticism until he got recognized for his work, by a few journalists. The specialty movement was raising and all of that, and then he got recognized for the product and what he was doing. But that's why I've always been looking up on him, because he's been a real pioneer.
Yeah. And at that time, you weren't thinking you were going to have an espresso bar in Melbourne. What were you thinking?
I thought I was going to be an engineer.
Oh.
Because that was, I don't know, we haven't discussed that last time. I got graduated in 2007, chemical engineering in the University of Bologna and Modena, which are together. And I thought that my career was going to be engineering.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what I wanted to do. And I found a job in one of the major companies outside Bologna. And that's been, how I started in the engineering field. I was happy. I liked my job. I traveled as well. I was traveling. I was traveling a lot to USA for my company. Then after 3 years, the company, like the whole, Italy and Europe, started going through the GFC. That changed a lot of dynamics inside the company, and lots of politics, lots of internal fights. I got a little bit burned out. Not that much. I was young, I could, stand all of that. But the corporate life here is the same sometimes. It was very, very tough. So I went through some sort of I call it a personal crisis, because I love my job, but I was forced to consider whether that was what I wanted to do in life.
Yeah.
I think it happens to pretty much everybody at one point. So I thought, that the best way to go through my crisis was to take a gap year,
Okay.
do something else. And I took the chance to friends of mine, two of my best friends just got graduated at uni as well. And we thought, why don't we do that? If we don't do this something now, like let's leave, let's go somewhere completely different from Europe we want to see. So it was either USA, Canada or Australia.
Wow.
Then Canada was too cold. So
Yep.
and we decided for Australia.
Yeah.
And then it was meant to be only 1 year,
Yeah.
basically.
What did you know about Melbourne before you came?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Also, actually, the only thing that I knew was there's a huge Italian community, so instead of going to Melbourne, we flew to Perth. Because we didn't want to, take the risk of, okay, we go somewhere totally different, we're chasing something, a new experience, and we end up amongst Italians, So we wanted to avoid that. And so we landed in Perth, we spent 6 months in Perth. And are you cold?
No, I'm fine.
We spent 6 months in Perth. Then we bought a car at an auction, and we traveled with a car from Perth to Sydney, basically,
Oh, wow.
all along the southern coastal line. Best trip of my life.
I bet. That's
And I did a lot of
amazing.
road trips because I
Yeah.
come from a family. My dad is a big fan of road trips. He traveled Europe. You can't put it on a plane.
Yeah.
But when it comes to road trips, he traveled the whole Europe in the 70s with a tiny Fiat.
Wow.
And his friends,
That's iconic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe I got the inspiration from him. What a beautiful... That's exactly what we wanted to see. Uncontaminated wilderness, for miles and miles. I remember when we crossed the Null Harbour Plain in Western Australia, heading to Adelaide. Like, wow, like things that... And I traveled in my life, but what I've seen there, like, beautiful. Like, that was exactly what we, were after. Then we got to Sydney. From Sydney, I thought, you know what? Before leaving, I want to go and see Melbourne. So I came to Melbourne, and something happened in Melbourne in the sense that Perth, Sydney, beautiful cities, like stunning. Perth, beautiful beaches, weather amazing. Sydney, stunning city. It's the Opera House, the bridge, the bay. It's beautiful. But it was like, okay, it's not where I would live. Instead, when I got to Melbourne and I arrived, I still remember that I arrived in February. The weather was terrible because February is when the weather starts changing sometimes. It was raining. I didn't have long sleeves clothes because I had this idea that Australia is the sunny place, know. So I was like, geez, this is terrible. Like, it's only raining. I thought one day it's raining, well, tomorrow maybe it's going to be better. No, tomorrow was even worse. But slowly I started, falling in love with Melbourne.
Yeah.
That's how simply I would put it. Because, food culture, coffee culture.
Where were you staying?
I stayed for the first 3 months. I was in the city.
Yeah.
And I thought that was Melbourne, like Melbourne is the city. Then I had the opportunity to move into a share house with some friends of mine that I met here in Melbourne. I was in Collingwood. So imagine, first 2-3 years, Collingwood, Fitzroy, Abbotsford.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like this is so cool, I was younger, there were like house parties, there were, so many, like I really fell in love with the life and the vibe of Melbourne. And at one point, I remember this was the second year that I was in Australia. I remember having a conversation with this guy, a French engineer, who told me, Oxans, who told me, you've got a degree, why don't you stay here? You've got work experience as well, you can get the permanent residency. I say, I never thought of that before. I was thinking that he was making it too easy, to be honest. Then instead I went to check on the immigration website. I saw, God, that's true. I can use my, government sponsorship basically. So that's what I did. It took me a year. It's been, not as easy as I thought, because you got to go through a long process, skills assessment, English test, qualification assessments, and all of that. But in 1 year, I had the permanent residency. So then I found myself, I had the permanent residency in 2013, so 10 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I was quite surprised that once you get that, you can do whatever you want. So that's when I started thinking, you know what, instead of going back to corporate life in Italy, how about I move here for good and I do something here? Because at the same time I was extremely charmed by, seeing how many young guys of my age here in Melbourne had the opportunities that we don't have in Italy or in Europe in general. I thought what I was seeing, lots of young coffee owners, restaurant owners, and I say, like, this is really like a land of opportunity. And I thought, since moving here was going to be a big change, already, I thought, how about I make it even bigger, and I chase something that I truly love. Not that I didn't love my job, but
Sure.
I didn't like the corporate life.
Yes.
I didn't like what working for 10, 20 years in a company turns you into. Because that's what triggered my crisis in Italy. I thought I was looking up and say, okay, which one of these people I want to become into?
Right. Yeah.
Because that was the outcome, you're going to become like one of these. And then I had to realize I don't want to become like one of them, and instead I decided, it was a big risk, but I decided to take it in the name of, the passion I had for coffee, for hospitality, I would say. A story that I always like to tell is when I was working as an engineer, you work with, and I used to work with big budgets, lots of money, numbers, computers, equipment, laboratory, and things like that. So imagine at the end of a full week, for example, full of stress, like, yes, reward was there, but I was going home to my mom, to my family. No one cared. No one cared because they couldn't understand what.
No, that's right.
It's normal. It's
Yeah.
and not that was getting me frustrated, but I was thinking, my reward is there and exists only when I'm there. As soon as I'm outside, like, people don't care about it. Not that I needed attention or I needed validation. But once I discovered what hospitality brings you, which is, God, you make good coffee. You buongiorno to a lady, you have a chat with someone, you can change their day.
Yeah, that's right.
And you see the impact that seeing maybe grumpy people, stressed people, walking into the espresso bar, thinking, I'm in a rush, I want to have a coffee, geez, this is another, silly Monday, I've got... And then noticing the immediate reward that you get when their mood changes because of the experience that you deliver. And it takes something that is a lot easier than spending hours in the laboratory in front of computers, going through numbers. I fell in love with the immediate reward that gives you. So, and then you see that people want to come back just to have the coffee that you make and the chat and the energy that you give them. To me, I never wanted to come back.
Yeah. Did you work for someone else first and before you opened
I used
your
to
own
work
place?
for the Nicolini's brothers. I don't know if you know them, but basically the people behind Doc,
okay.
Plus 39, A25, a family of Italian, hospitality entrepreneurs. And I learned from them, because I think especially one of the two brothers, Tony, the brothers are Tony and Remo, especially Tony, which is the founder of the Doc Group. I think he's been a pioneer of the modern Italian hospitality in Melbourne. Because before him, the Italian hospitality in Melbourne was still geared towards the Italians for tourists, you know. Carbonara with cream, fettuccine alfredo, like more things, spaghetti meatballs, the things that you find in Italian restaurants overseas for tourists. Tony brought freshness and innovation. You know, he started importing ingredients. You know, that's the name, DOC. You know, it's a standard. It's a set of law that regulates the standards for authentic Italian products. So that's where he got the name. And so he started having, you know, real Parmigiano Reggiano, real Pecorino. I remember because I was here 12 years ago when first they allowed to import prosciutto, for example.
Yeah, wow, okay.
So before it wasn't even legal, like you couldn't import prosciutto.
That's so recent, wow.
Yeah, very recent.
Okay.
I remember because I was here in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and when the first prosciutto arrived in a restaurant, we unpacked it, you know, it was on a counter, and there were all these Italians there, you know.
Yeah.
Like opening a treasure box, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
But they've been, you know, it's thanks to people like them that, you know, they brought a whole new wave in the Italian hospitality in Melbourne. After that, it's been booming because then for the last 10 years you've seen a lot of places. Today you've got restaurants, Italian restaurants, some of the most successful ones that are not even owned by Italians. You take, for example, Tipo 00 in the city, one of the most successful pasta bars in Melbourne. You know, it's not even owned by Italians. There's some, I think in the kitchen, there's an Italian Australian, but the other business partners are not even Italians, you know. They learned from the experience that Tony and the first, let's say, innovators did in Melbourne. So.
And what did you like about this part of town for opening? When you first opened the espresso bar?
I think, you know, this part of town, despite I was, you know, let's say raised in the northern suburb and I was in love with them.
Yes.
And that's where I think I got a big push about the idea of coffee, and living in that part of town allowed me to understand that, God, there's lots of things that you can do. Coffee is not just espresso, coffee is not just the way Italians used to do it. You can do a lot more and you can improve a lot. And that's exactly what those guys, the first coffee roaster like Proud Mary, Seven Seeds, all the northern hipsters did. You know, they did an outstanding job. They ended up onto the Italian television not long ago. So, but then I wanted, you know, like this area here, and especially when I started looking for a shop, I liked about this area that 10 years ago it was like, you know, an area that had a lot of European charm, you know, antique shops, boutiques, like clothing, homeware, like quality homeware, Bistro Trieri, the French restaurant. So at the time he had it was such a cute shop. I don't know if you remember Gewürzhaus.
Yes.
You know, it was a nice European, more like sort of German tea shop, you know.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's not there anymore because I think it was very hard to pay the rent.
Right.
You know, in this area here by just selling tea and spices.
Yeah.
The Butch, Toscanos. I like the European feel. And the fact that in this area here, there's lots of people that travel to Europe regularly. Like some of my customers go to Italy more than me. Some of them they have holiday houses in Italy. And if they don't go to Italy, they go to France.
Yes.
You know, so...
Yeah. So they understand.
They understand, and they, you know, it was what I was afraid of. For example, Carlton is an area that 10 years ago was taken over by sort of fake Italian restaurants, you know, and I didn't want to mix up, and I didn't want to be forced to do spaghetti meatballs, for example, or fettuccine alfredo, or carbonara with mushrooms, those sort of things. I wanted to, find an area that had like a good understanding of what modern Italian food and authentic Italian food is. And so this area here gave me like, it's small, the street is not widespread, lots of shops. It felt a little bit like, like a European street.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to find this in Melbourne. And so I started looking in this area. In other areas around here, I had a look at 4 or 5 shops before finding this one, but somehow, and I think it was the presence of Gewurzhaus, Toscanos, the butcher, Bistro Thierry, that made me make up my mind. I say, I would like a shop in this area here. I didn't know this area, absolutely. I was a complete stranger. And that was a problem I also had at the very beginning, the first 2 years. There was I got a lot of the first 2 years, I got a lot of, I was the new player, I was the outsider. I had to earn the trust of the locals first.
Yeah.
So then slowly, the word of mouth did everything.
Yeah. And did you always have the idea that you wanted to have more of a restaurant in the evenings as well? Yeah.
Yeah, because, I was born and raised in Emilia-Romagna. It's a land, and living overseas helped me also. This is another thing that I acquired through, the experience of living overseas. It got me to understand a lot about my youth there. Because when you grow in a place, you take for granted everything that you have.
That's
like
right.
my nonna making pasta every weekend. I never bought egg-made pasta. Never bought once. Like pasta in Emilia-Romagna is made on Friday and Saturday. So then you eat it on a Sunday and the leftover the next week. I was raised on a Saturday seeing my nonna sheeting the pasta by hand, not with the machine, not even with those machines, the pasta roller, like by hand.
Yeah.
There's an interesting documentary, you probably watched The Chef's Table.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched the episode with Massimo Bottura in Modena.
No, I haven't.
If you watch that one, you see that the woman, it's I think in the first series of The Chef's Table, Massimo Bottura take the whole kitchen team to a house outside Modena where there's this lady, which is called in Emilia-Romagna Sfoglina. Sfoglina is the one that makes la sfoglia, and sfoglia is the sheet of egg-made pasta. When I saw that, I almost cried because I could see, the heritage of those ladies, that passed on to the next generation, the skills. It's a skill, it's an incredible skill, one, without using mechanical equipment, just the wooden rolling pin that is this long, and you roll the sheet, and you bring it to a thickness where I remember still my nonna, putting onto the pin and checking, how thin it was by putting against the sunlight. So that if the sunlight was going through, it means it was thin enough. I took all these things for granted.
Yes, wow. Wow.
Like the bolognese sauce that she was making. My nonnies used to make the wine that today I serve here. Because for years and years, for centuries, the tradition of wine making in Emilia-Romagna was making natural wines.
Okay.
It's just that they weren't trendy, they weren't popular. No. Until you started going 5, 6, 7 years ago in the first wine bars in Fitzroy, and you see this strange looking bottle of wine. They've got more sediments, they've got this fizziness, they've got these, they're not clear, they're not filtered. And I started thinking, God, you want to see that in a few years' time, like the natural wines will be a big trend here in, not only in Melbourne, but I noticed even in other countries. And then I saw what happened in the same time in Emilia-Romagna. A lot of producers, went back to the traditional natural winemaking. And so I thought, God, like, what's best for me to just bring, the traditions that I raised up with. So I'm lucky that I found Gabriele, the chef. Wonderful guy. He's very passionate about the pasta that he makes. He's from Piedmont. He's from Turin, so which is not Emilia-Romagna, but they've got an incredible tradition for egg-made pasta, pasta sheeting, and pasta in general.
So is he making more Piemontese food or more
No,
Emilia-Romagna?
he's got the way he learned the pasta making is the way they do in Piemonte, because he used to work for Michelin star restaurants in Piemonte. But Piemonte and Emilia-Romagna are not far away.
Okay.
When you make egg-made pasta, we make it in the same way. We just then shapes are different,
Yeah.
or we give a different name. Sauces can be different, but in general, we like more to think of the recipe rather than sticking to a specific regionality. For example, the rigatoni beef ragu, which I think is a wonderful. He came up with this idea. It's made with the rigatoni. It's durum with pasta, bronze extruded, and the ragu is not a bolognese ragu, which is very finely chopped. It's more like chunky,
Yeah.
and it's done all with the knife. It's very rustic. That recipe is more a recipe that you would find either in Tuscany or Piemonte.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have to be Emilia-Romagna. But what we've got in common is that there's a strong artisanal component to the recipe that we design. So we make the pasta in house. The ragu, it would be easier to take the meat using a meat processor, getting ground, and and make a bolognese. The real bolognese is still done by knife. I didn't want to do that and grind all the meat and give these. So we say, you know what? We'll make it chunkier, and we make something that has got more the trattoria feel. Because that's the food I like to eat when I go to Italy. I don't. There's been a big wave of fine dining restaurant, and it's good as an experience. I like going there. But when I go home, the last thing that I do is going for fine dining. I go to the trattoria, the osterias. There are thousands of wonderful restaurants in Italy and Emilia-Romagna that I just like to get lost there and enjoy those things. And
The ragu was so good with the eggs, the baked eggs as well.
yes, that's the same ragu that we use with the baked eggs too.
And what a perfect size, because I didn't feel, like I'd eaten too much. It's like and it's not too rich, but it's got those really rich flavors. It was delicious.
Yeah. It's Gabriele is good with these things. He's got an understanding of pasta that is, Sometimes you do recipes that, for example, are more like traditional of south of Italy. Last year we used to make the spaghetti vongole. This year we do the red spaghetti with lobster.
That was amazing.
Yeah. Those are more typical of south of Italy.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we don't want to get too tied up to a specific region. Also, you got to think that it's, when you design a recipe today, you got to be very conscious of the ingredients that you use, because the prices of everything went up.
Yes.
Everything went up after the pandemic. So we would rather not be tied up to regionality. Instead, I like to, because it's a cuisine that I know quite well, I like always to have something from the tradition of Emilia-Romagna. Last year we used to make the tortelli, which I want to bring out this summer again in a bit of a twisted way. Tortelli, which we call it tortelli, but you can call them ravioli. Ravioli with Parmigiano Reggiano red cow, which is the Parmigiano Reggiano aged 36 months, and it's made by the cows that belong to the breed of the red cow, which are a lot more special because those are the former cows that used to be used 200 years ago to make the Parmigiano Reggiano.
Okay.
Then they got replaced with other cows, Swiss cows, the Swiss brown cow that was able to had a better yield in terms of milk.
Yeah.
So they producers could make more cheese. But the flavor is not the same as the red cow. The red cow makes more milk. It's a cow that is more like delicate to look after, but the flavor of the cheese is wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So we make this summer we're gonna make tortelli with a red cow filling, Parmigiano Reggiano red cow filling. It's also there's a friend of mine, my neighbor in Italy. He's a young guy. He's 20 something, He's a hard worker that wakes up every morning at 5. When you have cow, he's got 20, 40 cows, no, 20 cows, red cows. He wakes up every day at 5 and he goes back home at 11 midnight. He just go to sleep 7 days a week.
Wow.
Now, there's only one thing that allows you to do this, is the passion that he's got.
Yeah.
Now, I like to think, that what I do supports him as well. And, there's a strong component that behind the idea of artisanality is that we want to support, the people that work the product, the people that, spend time and are dedicated to. It's an idea, of sustainability that we've got for the future. I think at one point we gotta stop, and the pandemic has been a very good chance to stop and reflect about the way we are living. There's too much. The way we think of food, the way we think of eating, the conviviality that we've got around the table. I like to think that we are doing something that get us to step back a little bit, go back and understand, what's behind a cheese.
Yes.
What's behind, a house-made pasta. What's behind a natural wine. I have these memories, and I remember, I'll just tell you this story because I remember when I contacted the idea of serving natural wines. I got that last year when I was home, and I went home after the 3 years of pandemic.
Yeah.
So running a business for 3 years throughout the pandemic has been like an absolute nightmare. Like 3 years, I used to go back before that, I used to go back once a year, and it was I was recharging 6 weeks, and I was recharging the batteries, and I was coming here always with new ideas, new things, new thoughts, The pandemic kept me here 3 years. I couldn't travel. So when I went home last year, I spent the first week sitting on a chair thinking, what the heck just happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had this feeling of anger, thinking, what did I spend the last 3 years? I spent the last 3 years running around like a headless chook. Every day, waking up, reading the news, the numbers, what's going to happen today, table service, no table service, take away, no take away, you're shut, you're off. An inspection from, one government department, then an inspection for the police, then check the policies, update the policies, show the policies to the coronavirus task force. Mayhem. It's been a complete mayhem. So, during my relaxed time last year, since my sister-in-law is an enologist, and she makes wine in this small vineyard outside my hometown. Biodynamic agriculture, natural wine. I was sipping the wine and I was thinking, that this wine would be wonderful with the project of cuisine that we are working on. And she's like, well, why don't you serve that?
Yeah.
I said, well, because importing stuff has become incredibly expensive and, troublesome at the moment. I said, well, look, that there's an Australian wine importer that imports the whole production. It's a small vineyard. So I say, really? They say, yeah. We're like, well, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's in Sydney, maybe it's in Western Australia. I say, well, let me look it up. She said, let me look it up and I'll tell you where it is. And then she goes, oh, do you know a place called Coneywood?
Yeah.
And I say, wow, like problem solved. And he specialized, this guy, quel vino, his name is an Italian Australian, Michael Zaccaria. He specialized in natural wine from Emilia-Romagna. So I called him and I say, Michael, bingo.
Yeah.
So that's why I got a lot of his wines, and they go well with our cuisine, they go well with our fried stuff, the gnocco fritto that you've tried, all of these, like, they have these, like, the way I describe them is they've got a depth of flavor, like a fizziness that goes extremely well with fried stuff, with antipasti, with the truffle croquettes, and also with pasta, rustic pasta recipes, you know. So, and to me, I always have that emotional, you know, connection with the wine that my nonna used to make, because my nonna used to be like that.
Wow.
And making wine for them was a side thing, lots of the Italians, when they make the passata, the wine and all of that, it's a side thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember my nonna and also my nonna's families, you know, always used to make wine. My nonna's sister owns like a small vineyard. And I remember every Christmas, every Easter, they used to bring this wine on the table that was, you know, unrefined, unfiltered, like cloudy, and that was the only wine that I used to drink when I was little. You know, in Italy you start drinking wine when you're little because, you know, you start drinking a little bit in the water.
Yeah.
Then after, you know, when you're more than 15, you can have it without the water.
Yeah.
But that's a very good thing that I like about our culture, because, you know, we grow up with the idea that wine is not a taboo. We get used to it. We know that it's part of the way we socialize and the way we spend time with our family.
Yeah.
And especially it's the older one that control and pour you the wine. You know, you're not allowed to pour it yourself until you achieve a certain age.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. We don't turn 18 with the idea, God, we gotta go and get the booze to get smashed, which is what I see here sometimes.
Yeah, it's the same in France.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I started going outside and traveling, I started having the more classic wines, you know, the Chianti, Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, Sauv Blanc. And I was like, these wines are different from the one that I have. Then I learned, no, is the wine that is known outside of my region.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
And I thought, you know, the wine that we make is not popular outside. It's just our wine, you know. Until a few years ago, where I you know, started noticing, God, like, this is the wine, you know, the wine that I used to drink when I was little is starting to become popular again.
But it's interesting because I would have said I don't like natural wine, because when I went to, and I love Dr. Morse, but went to Dr. Morse and all of the wines were natural wine. I'm like, oh God, like, I can't drink any of this. But the other night, the wines that I tasted here, I loved them. So what is that?
Because, you know, there's like the possibilities when it comes to natural wine are like huge, you know. The philosophy is different from the traditional winemaker, from the traditional winemaking, and this is another thing that I really appreciate in their philosophy, because traditional winemaking is normally done with, it can be done in every part of the world. Like if you do it in California, in France, or in Australia, you can use same Sauvignon Blanc, for example. The yeast that you use for the fermentation is a commercial yeast that can be found in different parts of the world, and it's assembled to give you a certain style of fermentation and are sold, you know, like, for example, imagine the yeast that is sold in baking, you know, these sort of things. When it comes to natural winemaking, all these things are not allowed, because you're allowed to use only grapes that belong to that indigenous grape. Oh. So the one that we had the other day is Spergola. Yeah. It's a grape that you can't grow in California, in Australia, or it's a classic indigenous grape of Emilia-Romagna that used to be used centuries ago already. The yeast must come from the same land. You can't go and buy a commercial yeast. The agriculture must be either organic or biodynamic. So there's no chemistry involved, no fertilizers, you know. I picked up all of these things because, you know, with my background, to me, it was very easy to understand all of these things, you know. Because definition about natural wine can be confusing. And when we talk about no intervention of chemistry and this sort of stuff, to me, it's always been very clear, because I understand those processes. So instead of like the winemaker in natural winemaking, instead of thinking, I I gotta make a beautiful Sauvignon Blanc that people like. The approach is, for the natural winemaker, like my sister-in-law who uses exactly that approach, is how can I give the best expression of this grape in this point in time, so with this crop that I've got, in the glass.
Yeah.
So, and if you think that they're not allowed to use fertilizers, they're not allowed to use irrigation, they're not allowed to use sulfites. Basically, they're allowed to use only the grape. It becomes a lot more tricky because you're not allowed to use adjustments. So, what happens? If you know what you're doing, and if you're an experienced winemaker, and you've got a good understanding of what you're doing, you can turn the grape into an outstanding wine. Like, to me, the Frizzante, the one we had the other night, and also you had the Rosé as well.
I was going to bring the Rosé up because I lived in the south of France, so I feel like I love those light Provençal rosés, and I was blown away by that rosé.
Yeah, so...
can I buy it? Can you buy wine off the shelf here?
Absolutely, yeah. We do. I think that we do. I want to do off the shelf. We give 30% discount.
Yeah.
Because I want to encourage people. You've got some friends over. Instead of going to Denmark, if you want to have something a little bit more. And the good thing about many natural wines is that they're not more expensive than the classic wines.
Yeah.
So
is that rosé from your area as well?
You're talking about the one with the bubbles or the still one?
Oh, I liked both of them.
The one with the bubbles, yes.
But the still one, no.
The still one is from Marche region, which is just below Emilia-Romagna.
I think that's what I was talking about, but I did like the bubbles one. That's what I was
It's got a nice, that one's got a nice, apart from being extremely soft on the palate, it's also got nice, like, flowers, like the violets. It's very... It's very distinctive. And it's not easy to find a good rosé in Italy. That's why you see a lot of Provence-style rosés here, but when you go to Italian restaurants, it's hard because we don't have the same grape and the same climate of the south of France.
Yeah. But what is the geography and climate in Emilia-Romagna?
We've got we've got flat land and hills.
Oh.
And so the soil can be different. And that already gives quite of a big variety of soil. Then you've got part of Emilia-Romagna is also facing the sea, which another part is not. So you've got another, you've got already 3 dimension in the climate. Then you've got, in general, summers are hot, springs are warm, and very like mellow heat, nice, very enjoyable spring there. Winters are cold.
Yeah.
So cold winters, hot summer, warm springs, it's a help for winemaking.
Okay.
Because, it gives, basically, when the grape grows, it allows, to be exposed, like being exposed to cold, develop certain qualities in the grape, being exposed to heat, gives other. But when the heat is consistent, like in the Italian summer, that's when you get, a good concentration of sugar, and you can work with flavor. The interesting thing about climate in Italy is that from north to south, you have so many different micro ecosystems that the variety of wine that Italy makes is outstanding. France is the same, though. Because also France is a big country.
Yes, I was going to say, and then I realised it's probably a mistake to say this, but I feel like New Zealand is becoming the same as well. I'm from New Zealand, and I feel like...
What about
from Christchurch. But you know that Central Otago region, it actually can get surprisingly warm in the summer.
Yes.
And they have the best stone fruit, and now they have all those really amazing Pinot Noirs from Bannockburn and so on, from Central Otago. And it's very cold there in the winter. So I think that's a really interesting idea.
Cold is a necessary condition for Pinot Noir. That's why having cold winters. That's why the only region that does very good Pinot Noir in Italy is the Trentino Alto Adige, which is up where the Alps are. Because else, for example, if you go to south of Italy, no one's making Pinot Noir because you need cold winters.
Well, I don't really like the Australian Pinot Noirs, apart from the Tasmanian ones, and I think because Tasmania is quite similar to New Zealand, to their climate as well. So that must be, why.
Yeah, they're very. I mean, I noticed.
I'm learning so much from you. It's all coming together.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, the Pinot Noir from New Zealand is better to me than Pinot Noir. I don't find. It's easy to drink, the Australian Pinot Noir, the one from Mornington, for example, and I think this is the reason why many customers like it. I have both, because at the very beginning I used to have only the Pinot Noir from Italy, but it's quite of a different style. It's full cherry, and it's got oakiness and a bit of spices too, which is what Italians expect from a Pinot Noir from Italy.
Right.
But when some customer used to order that, they said, but I was expecting something different. Then I've learned that they are expecting the Pinot Noir from Mornington, which doesn't have any oakiness, doesn't have any spice.
It's like a juice.
Yeah, it's light. Yeah, true, that's what it is. It's light and a bit fruity and very easy to drink, not very structured, so it makes it easy to drink. That's why they like it. But so now that I have both. But that's why I agree with you, like Pinot Noir from New Zealand is a lot more interesting than the one from Mornington. But New Zealand is doing quite well with wines too.
They've come a long way, I think, in many areas.
Well, it seems that New Zealand for agriculture is more ahead than Australia. Australia is still a lot about like intensing farming in their. I work in the farm. I did the farm work to get the second working holiday visa.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I remember I had a lot of conversation with farmers.
It's such a funny idea. I still think because as New Zealanders, I'm not a permanent.
Yes.
Well, I'm a perm. Well, am I a permanent resident?
My ex-girlfriend, the first girlfriend that I had here in Australia was from Christchurch, Angela. Yeah. So that's why I know something about. Yeah, she moved here after the earthquake.
Me too. A lot of us did. Yeah.
And so it's through her that I've learned. I've never been to New Zealand, but through her I learned a lot of the differences between. Because when you come here from Europe, you think, Australia and New Zealand. You tend to think, pretty much. Instead, very different.
Very different.
Different mentality.
Well, it's a small country. There's 5 million people in the whole country. So then you do have a different mentality when you grow up on an island with that amount of people and I think it's a country that strives to be, to play with the big players, in sports and in music and in art and so on.
For being a small country, is doing really well. Yeah. And also what I admire about New Zealanders is, they could, in hospitality, farming, they take pride in what they do.
Yeah.
That's why I see them working and caring more about their products than the Australians. The Australians most of the time is about this. Instead in New Zealand I noticed, because there's a lot of New Zealanders that come here to Melbourne.
Yes, that's right.
To work in hospitality and
a lot of
the
chefs,
manager of Tipo 00, for example, was from New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
When I went there, yeah.
You're right.
Like they want to do well. They respect the products. They understand, what clean agriculture is. They take pride for what they grow, and this is reflected by the New Zealanders that I met here.
Yeah. Good. That's good to know. But much as I love it all being about me, we should go back to talk. Great celebration of my country, but back to you. And So how is it going now that you've changed the how would you've changed it up a bit here?
I wanted to venture into full restaurants because 2 reasons. I love coffee. Yeah. That's been my first love, I would say. But then when I go outside and eat in other restaurants and I always thought, I can do this.
Yeah.
I've got the understanding. I just needed the people. And the change is when I met Gabriele. Because Gabriele, the chef, used to be one of my customers.
Oh, okay.
He used to work at Caffè Latte
Yep.
and Caffè Cucina. And so, since he was, the classic Italian chef that fuels on himself on caffeine, and he wanted an Italian espresso, so I remember him coming here every morning before work, and always stopping here, always having 2 espressos, one having a chat and then another one. Very classic of the chef, so they get all ready for... And then, slowly I got into know him, and I thought, this is such a lovely guy. He doesn't have, unlike many other chefs that they can be very edgy, they drink, they do drugs. I work with a lot of chefs, and to find one chef that's got really stable, agreeable personality, or I was impressed with Gabriele. Had a huge passion for what he does, and this you can find in many chefs, but also was very like a nice guy, a nice guy. And so the chance to work together came just when the pandemic started, because all the restaurants, the classic restaurants, had to close down. We were open because we were pumping out coffee. And so I said, I don't want to stay home for the next year or so. Not that we knew how long we were staying shut for, but I said, I want to do stuff. And I said, well, why don't you come here? I said, I like to work at dinners because we do better stuff. And I said, well, that's exactly what I want to do. So how about you come and work with us? And then if you like, we work together at something, I would be, super happy to find someone like you that is passionate and all that. In the meantime, I got to know his family because his mom came here, his partner, Carlotta, and 2 years ago, during the pandemic, they had a baby as well. He lives around here, so I think, this guy we can get along together and do something together.
It's lovely. There's such a nice feel amongst your team. It feels like family because you all know each other so well, and you clearly all love what you do, and you care about the diner's experience. And that really comes through, and that's I think people forget what hospitality is, and I think that the diners have a role to play as well, and being appreciative and
the diners actually reflect a lot of your personality.
Yeah.
If they see that you're passionate, if you see that you're striving to do, to deliver a good experience, because it's not just about food. I think good food, good wine, good coffee, is just the starting point. Then these, without the experience that you're delivering, it's not enough. It's about how people feel as well, and of course I always like to talk about the stories behind espresso, the pasta, the natural wines. I always love to talk about these things because I want them to understand that there's a specific philosophy, because I really would like, in the future, I want to work more, on communicating the fact that we really want to be, to do what we do, by promoting sustainability and artisanality of what we do, because that's what I believe in for the future. The reason why I like natural wine is not only because of the flavor that might have in the glass, that, as we were talking about before, sometimes you find wine that people love, and sometimes I've got some wines that people would taste them and say, geez, what is that? That are a bit too extreme.
Yeah.
I like those too, but I'm conscious that not everybody likes them.
Yeah.
But what I like about them is the philosophy that's behind it. There's no intensive farming. There's no, use of chemicals. There's no big commercial logics behind them, and they work really hard. Because when I saw the way they work in biodynamic, for example, where my sister-in-law works, it's very hard work. It's easier to use mechanical equipment. All the grapes are harvested by hand, so there's a lot of work. I like to think that what I do here promotes what they do and also support them.
Yeah.
Hence, the cheese from my friend, from my former neighbor, the wine from, and Victoria and Melbourne are an incredibly good place to promote these things. And so I like to tell these stories to the customers so they're aware that there is something, it's not just giving you, this and that.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I give you this and that. But at the same time, the experience, you probably noticed how in the past 5 years, the experience in many Melbourne restaurants went down a lot. For many reasons. But I remember up to 5 years ago, before the pandemic, I used to go out at least 3 times a week. Now it's enough if I go once. Because most of the time when I go out, the experience is cold. You got staff that it seems that you're doing them a favor to be there. There's no passion. Yes, there's a concept. Yes, there's a branding. Yes, there are all these elements that make you think, oh yeah, this is cool. But when it comes to the human interaction, I got left with a bit of a
Yes. That's right.
So now I go out maybe once a week, sometimes not even once a week.
Yeah.
So I really care about, we have a lot of conversation with the staff on, how you should talk to the customer, what the customer wants to see, hear. You're gonna make them feel good.
Yeah.
The metaphor that I always use when I explain, especially to the new staff that I hire, is like, this sector is about trading. You really trade energy. You don't trade, products. You really trade energy. Because if you manage to get someone walk in the door in the morning that is grumpy, that is upset for something, you never know what's going on in other people's life, But if with your interaction you manage to have the people walking out with a smile, that's all it is in this sector.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say I would serve a coffee that is not as good as this one, but what I care about is that person walks out with a smile. That's all it is. But it's an element that is, that it got harder and harder to understand today for many operators. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, so I feel like I talk too much.
I feel like it was a wonderful talk.
We're here for this.
I am. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Conversation with a Chef with Claudio Casoni at Officina Gastronomica Italiana. So sorry for my Italian. You can check out all the goodness on Instagram at OGI Melbourne. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more stories from other chefs, I'm on Instagram at Conversation with a Chef. You can read the chat and become a subscriber at www.conversationwithachef.com. What's good about becoming a subscriber is that I feel loved, and I think there's actually maybe people who are reading this as well as listening to it. And then you also get to know when new stories come up because it comes into your inbox, I believe. I'd also absolutely love it if you told a friend about my chats. And of course, you can follow me on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and recently Audible and Amazon podcasts as well. It's like a potteroo, but in a podcast form. Once again, thanks so much for listening and have a great day. Bon appétit.